Good morning, friends. We are going to start history of English literature. And in this very first lecture, I am going to begin with Alfred, Geoffrey, Chaucer. So let us just see. Chaucer was born in 1340 in the reign of King Edward III. He lived through the reign of Richard II and died in 1400, the year after Henry IV ascended the throne. So he saw the reign of three kings. Chaucer was known as the first poet who was buried in what is now known as Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. So Chaucer पहला व्यक्ति था जिसे वेस्टमिंस्टर अबे में दफनाया गया. Chaucer wrote in East Midland dialects. His literary career can be divided into three main groups: French, Italian, and English. During his French period, he wrote The Remont of the Rose. It is a lengthy, allegorical poem written in octosyllabic couplet. The poem was originally based upon a French work, De Remont de la Rose. The French work was composed by Guillaume Loris and Jean de Meung. The next book in this period was written by Chaucer is The Book of the Duchess, 1369. Chaucer composed this poem in 8 syllabic line. It was composed when John of Gaunt's wife died. So this book was written on the death of the wife of John of Gaunt. Next is The Compliment up to Piety and ABC, The Compliment of Mar. Italian periods. During his Italian period, Chaucer wrote Troilus and Cressida. Its subject was adopted from Boccaccio's. It was written in rhyme royal and considered first novel in English. तो अंग्रेजी की फर्स्ट नावल ट्रॉयलस क्रेसिडा को कहा जाता है. Chaucer dedicated this poem to John Gower. इस पुस्तक को इन्होंने जॉन गावर को डेडिकेट किया. The House of the Fame. It is a dream allegory type poem written in an octosyllabic couplet. The Legend of Good Women. The poem is first known attempt to use the heroic couplet in English, but it remains incomplete. So Legend of Good Women is incomplete. और इस पुस्तक में पहली बार इन्होंने हीरोइक कपलेट का प्रयोग किया, जो आगे चल के अलेक्जेंडर पोप ने अपनी पुस्तक द रेप ऑफ लॉक में बखूबी प्रयोग किया है. एनेलिडा एंड एरसाइट, पार्लियामेंट ऑफ फाउल्स. Books written during English period. The Canterbury Tales. The poem was indebted to Boccaccio. There are 29 pilgrims, including Chaucer. In the poem, they go on a pilgrimage to the tomb of Thomas Becket at Canterbury. In the way, they stay in Tabard Inn in Southwark. These pilgrims, they make a plan that every pilgrim will tell two tales, to the way and two in the returning way. The knight tells the first tale and the parson tells the last tale. Chaucer tells the tale of Melibus. The tale of Melibus and the parson are composed in prose. So remember all these points. All other tales are composed in decasyllabic or heroic couplet. There are total 20 finished and 4 partly completed tales in the Canterbury Tales. The Lake of Steadfastness. See, next poem है The Completeness to Chaucer to his empty birth. Next is William Langland. He was born in 1332 and died in 1400. The vision of William concerning the ploughman in 1362 is his remarkable poem. The next author is John Gower. जॉन गावर को मॉरल गावर भी कहते हैं. द स्पेकुलम मेडिटेंटिस. दिस पोएम कंपोज्ड बाय गावर in French. Vox Clamentis It is also composed in Latin. Confessio Amantis. Confessio Amantis Friend is written in English. Next is John Barber. John Barber was basically a Scottish poet. Barber is considered the first Scottish poet. Bruce Barber composed this lengthy poem in 20 books. Next is Sir John Mandeville. ट्रैवल्स इनकी पुस्तक है. दिस इज़ द ट्रांसलेशन ऑफ फ्रेंच बुक इन इंग्लिश. जॉन वाइक्लिफ. जॉन वाइक्लिफ इज़ द फादर ऑफ प्रोज and the morning stars of Reformation. He is also the first man to translate the Bible into English. The Bible translation of Holy Book Bible in English. इन्होंने एक मोमेंट चलाया था जिसको लोलार्ड मोमेंट कहते हैं और इनके फॉलोअर्स को लोलार्डियंस कहते हैं. द नेक्स्ट ऑथर इज सर थॉमस मैलरी. इन्होंने मॉर्टेडी आथर को 1469 में 1469 में लिखा, बट इट वाज पब्लिश्ड इन 1485. नेक्स्ट इज जेम्स फर्स्ट. James I was the poet king among the Scottish poets. He married with the cousin of Henry V named John Beaufort. The king's choir James composed this poem in rhyme royal. Published to the play Christie's Kirk on the Zam. Next is Sir David Lindsay. The Dream. Lindsay composed this poem in rhyme royal. Rhyme royal is of 7 lines. The Testament of Squire Meldrum. It is a romantic biography written in octo-syllabic couplet. In pleasant satire of the thirsty 3 status. It is a morality play. Robert Henryson. Moral fables of Scope. Orpheus and Eurydice. Testament of the Cressida. This work is considered a continuation of Chaucer's Trills and Cressida. The next is William Dunbar. William Dunbar was the chief of the Scottish Chaucerian poets who wrote more than 90 poems. Golden Torch. Dance of the 7 deadly scenes. Tua married women and widow. The lament for the Mechanic. Timon Martis continue. Next is Gawain Douglas. The Palace of Honor. King Hart. Conscience in it. John Skelton. Garland of Laurel. Why come ye not to court? This poem is a satire on Wolsey. Next is The Tonnage of Eleanor Roaming. It is also a satirical poem which shows realism. Dirge on Edward IV. It is a serious poem. The Bows of Court. It is also a serious poem. Magnificence is a morality play. Next is John Leggett. He is known as poet Paul of Chaucer. So you have to just here keep in your mind that John Leggett is known to be the poet Paul of Chaucer. The Fall of Princes. Temple of Glass. London Lyckpenny. Next is Story of Thieves. This poem is considered a supposed edition of Canterbury Tales. Thomas Oakley. He is known as Thomas Oakley. Oakley's Complaint. The Complaint of Our Lady, the Regiment of Princes. This poem is edification of Henry V. La Mel Regi. It is a partly autobiographical poem. Next is Stephen Hawes. The Pastime of Pleasure. It is a romantic homiletic poem written in rhyme royal, stanza and couplet. Alexander Barclay. The Ship of Fowl. Originally it is a translation of a German work, Certain Eclogue, it is a collection of pastoral in English. Reginald Peacock, the repressor of overmuch blaming of the clergy, the Book of Faith. Next is John Fisher. John Fisher, The Ways of the Perfect Religion. This work is considered the first rhetorical religious book in English literature. Next, Thomas More, The Life of John Peakes, The History of Richard III. This book is important. Utopia, originally it is a Latin work. Its English translation came out in 1551. William Caxton. Caxton brought the first printing machine in London in 1476. He is known as the first printer of English language. He translated around 24 books into English. Recluse of the History of Troy, 1471. It was the first remarkable translation of 24 translations. The Deities and Sciences of Philosophers. This book is considered the first printed book in English literature. So remember this one. Edmund Spenser. Spenser was born in 1552 and died in 1599. He introduced Spenserian stanza which consisted of 9 lines. Amoretti. This book was collection of 88 Petrarchan sonnet. Epithalamion. Spenser composed this poem in the honor of his own marriage. Fairy Queen. It was an allegorical poem. Its first installment was published in 1589 and second in 96. The main character of this book was Prince Arthur, who married to Gloriana in the end of the book. Next book is written by Edmund Spenser is Colin Cloud's Come Home Again. 4 hymns, Prothalamion. Spenser also composed some minor poems such as the Shepherd Calendars. And this date is also remarkable, the actual beginning or the actual flowering of Renaissance in England. The Ruins of Time, Tears of Muse, Mother Hubbard's Tale, and The Ruin of Rome. Besides poetic works, Spenser also wrote a prose work, A View of the Present State of Ireland. So this one is very important. Next is Sir Thomas Watt. Watt introduced couplet ending in Petrarchan sonnet. He composed 96 love sonnet which published in Turtle's Miscellany in 1557. Earl of Surrey is next. His name was Henry Howard, but in English literature Howard is known as Surrey. Surrey introduced Poulter's measure and blank verse in English poetry. His name is usually associated with Watt. His poems were published in Turtle's Miscellanies. Certain Book of Virgil's is the only book which was published separately. Next is Thomas Sackville of Dorset, The Mirror of Magistrate. Next author is George Gascoigne. Gascoigne coined the Surrey's term Poulter's measure. The Steel Glass. It was written in blank verse. Jocasta. It was a tragedy. Sometimes Jocasta is supposed to be the first tragedy instead of Garbaduck. Supposes. 1566. This book was considered the first prose comedy in English. Sir Philip Sidney's next author. Straffel Stella. It was a collection of 108 love sonnet written in Petrarchan octave. Arcadia. It was a pastoral romance which is similar to Moore Utopia. Next is Apology for Poetry. This book was a fine place of criticism. Originally it was an answer to Gosson School of Abuse. Samuel Daniel. Delilah, 1592. It was a sonnet series. Complaint of Rosamond, 1592. This poem was a romance. Civil War, 1595. It was a historical poem. Defense of Rhyme. This book is considered a fine piece of criticism. Queen's Wake. Heim Triumph. Next author is Thomas Campion. Campion was the contemporary of Shakespeare. Book of Ayers, two books of Ayers, Song of Mornings. Next is Phineas Fletcher. Purple Island are the Isles of Man. Isle of Man, 1633. Giles Fletcher is our next author. He was brother of Phineas Fletcher. Christie's Victories and Triumph. So let us